twice, as you know, 2 elections, and I think we're going to have a tremendous night tonight.
We raise the voices of Americans that say, we want a better day. We're going to make it happen. Thank you. God bless you. Let's do this.
It is time. Voters braved -7-degree temperatures and are now weighing in on who they want to be the GOP presidential candidate. Trump hopes to clear the board with a record-breaking win. Thank you for joining us this hour for America's Vote 2024, the Iowa Caucus. Joining me now, the Hill senior contributor and host of Daily Debrief, Kevin Cirilli. Kevin, welcome.
You made it.
It is officially caucus night. The events have begun. We are past 8 p.m. Walk us through what exactly is happening in the Hawkeye State.
So right now, over in Iowa, you've got thousands of Republican caucus goers and precinct captains heading in to the 1,600 precincts throughout the state. And they're going to begin caucusing. And what that means is essentially each candidate, so Trump, DeSantis, Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, the other candidates as well, they have to have a precinct captain make their case for why they think they should get the votes. And then it goes from there. Now, typically what I'm being told by most analysts is that the precincts are going to last about 60 minutes or so, plus or minus. But where it's close, most likely in suburban Des Moines, that's where you could have some of the precincts go a little bit longer. Now, if you look at Ann Seltzer's Des Moines Register NBC News poll that, of course, everybody's talking about within the last 24 hours that came out, 48% of voters are backing Trump, according to that poll, 20% for Nikki Haley, 16% for Ron DeSantis. Obviously, the battle for second place is a key storyline to be following tonight. Will Haley campaign be able to beat expectations, get second place, get momentum heading into the next primary state in New Hampshire? But separately from that, what is Trump's margin of victory should he win, as everyone's expecting him to do so according to the polls? If he is able to garner more than 13 percentage points of a margin of victory, he will set the record. And no doubt the sources in Trump world that I'm talking with, I just got off the phone with one earlier this evening, tell me that that is the story that they're hoping. They want to set a record.
So let's talk about those margins, because Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller, he was just asked about this by CBS News. He was asked if Trump will get higher than 45% margin tonight. Jason Miller responded saying, quote, "Don't try to raise expectations," later adding, "A win is a win."
Jason,
now look,
a win is a win. Look, that's what you call, Michael Schnell, adjusting expectations.
Right, well, is he
lowering them?
He's lowering them because obviously turnout has been a conversation tonight with the weather, the NFL game, of course.
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles go Birds.
I'm mentioning that for you as well. So, I mean, is the Trump campaign trying to reset those expectations right now? They want to come out of here saying that they made a win and they won, but what if the margin isn't that high?
Only in Washington could a win be a loss, right? And so I think for most people who are going to be watching the news tomorrow morning, they want to know who won and when they're going to find out if they stick around for tonight. And likely they're going to find out within the next 90 minutes or so or more. Now, the enthusiasm in terms of the record that is going to be set, there's only like 186,000 people who are going to vote in this thing. Think about that.
It's a very small number.
It's a fraction of a number. And because of the cold, that could even suppress the turnout. Now, the decision desk head pollster, Scott Transer, my buddy, he says that the cold weather actually might help the Trump people because, look, 8 in 10 Trump voters, according to the Ann Seltzer poll, 8 in 10 say that they are not going to change their mind. I was digging deeper into the crosstabs. 88% of Trump supporters say that they are excited to vote for him. Only 39% of Haley supporters, according to those crosstabs, suggest that they have enthusiasm to vote for her. So while Haley has momentum in the Hawkeye State, she lacks enthusiasm. It's a very different story for her, obviously, in New Hampshire.
Let's talk about that race for second place, because both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, there are massive stakes here for the both of them. Ron DeSantis has put everything into Iowa. He needs a strong showing. Nikki Haley, as you mentioned, has the momentum, but she's sort of looking at New Hampshire and South Carolina more, a state that she's doing well in, and of course her home state. Talk about the stakes for both of these candidates
Well,
tonight.
Trump's going to be giving his remarks in Des Moines, and the others are going to be scattered throughout the state. Our producer, Alex de Oliveira, says that DeSantis is going to be at Jersey Pub in Cedar Rapids. And then after he heads to the Jersey Pub, which it's kind of ironic, just given the whole situation, he's actually going directly to South Carolina.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
He's ditching New Hampshire because he knows it's the Haley orbit. It is a two-person race, to be blunt with you, in New Hampshire. But Haley's the former governor of South Carolina. So after New Hampshire, then they go down to South Carolina. But this is where you and I know this. It's the delegate math.
Yeah.
And 1,250 is the magic number. That's what you want to get to become the nominee, more or less. And if Trump has like 800 delegates after Super Tuesday on March 5th, it's a very, very tough way to figure out how anybody would stop him.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to catch him. Look, we're talking a lot about Iowa today. It's, of course, important because it's the first time we're actually seeing voters weigh in. We're going to finally see where the electorate stands. But let's talk about, in the grand scheme of things, how important Iowa actually is and how reflective it is of the entire campaign season. In just the past 20 years, just 2 of the past 5 Iowa caucuses, the winner of that on the Republican side has actually been the person who won the Republican nomination. Put this into context. How important is Iowa in the grand scheme of things?
Well, look, I'm a bit old school, and I do believe in the tradition of the Iowa caucus, especially when you look at it as a candidate being a CEO and the candidate running a business. And so as the CEO of a campaign, you have to make sure that you can operationalize and execute the fundraising that you've garnered and the organization that you have. So you have to be able to run a ground game. It is a good exercise in testing the folks and the apparatus surrounding the candidate and their campaign, because whoever's commander-in-chief is going to have to operationalize a plethora of various different communications and obviously military exercises as well. So yeah, I think it is important from that standpoint. But you mentioned, all right, now let's look at its checkered past. You'd have to go all the way back to 2000, okay, to find, if you forget 2020 because Trump was the nominee for the Republicans, all the way back to 2000 when W. Bush won the Iowa caucus and then became the nominee. After that, Cruz won in 2016. Trump became the nominee. Rick Santorum won in 2012, and Mitt Romney became the nominee. Mike Huckabee, remember that guy? He won in 2008, and John McCain, the late great Senator John McCain, became the nominee back in 2008. So it's got a checkered past, Chanel.
Absolutely. And even Democrats, too. 2020, Pete Buttigieg won.
Yeah.
You know, it's important because it's the first time it's like Hartsfield Landing in West Wing, right? It's the first time we're actually seeing voters weigh in.
Speaking my language.
It's the first time we're seeing voters weigh in, but is it reflective? That is an open question. I want to go back to the Trump factor in Iowa, because this is actually new reporting that broke a few minutes ago from the New York Times. Before he goes to a campaign event in New Hampshire, the former president is actually going to go attend the opening day of the second E. Jean Carroll trial. So this is just a clear example of, while Trump is campaigning for president, he's also going to have to worry about these legal entanglements. And look, we saw with the 4 indictments last year, it didn't affect him in the polls. He actually surged in the polls after these indictments. Do you see any of these legal entanglements, these photos of him in courtrooms, are they going to affect him negatively at all this year?
It's like Roe v. Wade. It might help him in a primary, but it might hurt him in a general.
Right.
You know, you look at the polls that suggest that should he be found guilty on any of those charges, that independents, moderate swing voters, like where I grew up in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, the collar counties of Philadelphia, likewise in Maricopa County in Arizona, you head on down to some of the other battleground counties, it's tougher for him. If you look at I believe you would know this better than anyone in the Hill, the 16 or so districts that Biden won, that Republicans carried in their
18 of them.
18. Hey, there you go. There she is, Michael Schnell. 18 of those districts. That right there that shows the divide in America. So I'm not sure, quite honestly, to your earlier point, that the conversation that we're having in the caucus is the same conversation that we're going to be having in the general election. Should Trump ultimately be the nominee? Obviously, there's this outstanding factor of, will there be a viable third-party alternative? I was talking with a source earlier that tells me that former governor of Maryland, who backed Nikki Haley, Governor Larry Hogan, he's going to be in Washington later this week. If Haley isn't the nominee, where do those people go? Do they try to coalesce behind someone? So that's another factor. But you know, the trail and the trial, that's something that Trump has had to really navigate through the past couple of months. The sources close to him tell me that they feel that they've settled that issue. And the second the Supreme Court rules on that Colorado case, they feel that the ruling is going to go their way, which is a big assumption, but that if it does, it'll settle the issue for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of curveballs possible. This is a 2-party race. Tonight is a big night for the Republicans, but let's talk about the Democrats a little bit, because President Biden's team is watching the polls tonight. His communications director for the campaign, Michael Tyler, he said his team is going to be, quote, watching closely to see who emerges here tonight in Iowa. I want to ask you about a recent CBS News YouGov poll. It showed that Nikki Haley is in the best standing against President Biden among Haley, DeSantis, DeSantis and Trump. Nikki Haley leads Biden by 8 points. The others lead Biden by 1, 2, or 3 points. Do you think the Biden campaign is fearful of a candidate, of a nominee, Nikki Haley, considering those polling numbers?
I think it's too early to look at the Haley-Biden matchup through the prism of a general election, and here's why. She hasn't had the full force of the Democratic Party make a comparison against her record. And she also hasn't really said whether or not she would back Trump or she would choose a different path forward. So I think it's way too early in terms of that. Obviously, the Haley campaign is saying that that's what they that's their whole message, that she would have a better shot of beating Biden in a general election. Now, Trump world would say, well, wait a minute, we can turn out people who can vote in sub-0 degrees. What do you mean we can't turn out people to vote? But the final point is Vice President Kamala Harris. She was out earlier saying that they beat Trump once and they'll do it again. So, you know, they're confident, but I think it is a bit too early. Biden was obviously in Pennsylvania. That is a key state that the Democrats are going to have to win back in order to get to keep the White House. That was a state that Trump carried for the first time since 1988 when he won it in 2016 and obviously lost it in 2020. You look at the polls, Biden is doing decently in Pennsylvania, but some of those other battlegrounds, like Michigan, for example, Ohio, which now is even more significantly red, it's really looking like Trump right now is doing very well in those battlegrounds. And I'll tell you, it's because of foreign policy, which the far left has divided the Biden base on, and also immigration, which has now become one of the most pressing issues in addition to the economy in this race.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I will note, have to say Allentown so then we can reference Billy Joel, of course, Long Islander.
Song.
You have to be able to reference it.
Look.
There you go, exactly. Kevin Cirilli with The Hill, thank you so much.
Birds.
It is Iowa caucus night. We have finally made it here.
You made it.
It's an exciting night.
This is just step one.
We have a lot
Level
a lot more voting nights to go. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us with our live updates on America's Vote 2024. For more live coverage throughout the evening, please tune into News Nation for all of tonight's results and keep an eye on thehill.com for updates from The Hill's campaign team.